We speak of multipolarity as though it's something that will happen. You have to build multipolarity. And you build multipolarity by building national capacities. Terms are different. Times are different. A few months make a difference. A few weeks make a difference. A few tweets make a difference.
In North America, it will not only be Silicon Valley, because we have a fantastic woman scientist leading our country. And be a woman and to be a scientist is made a big difference.
In our business, we saw growth in the first 6 months by 15%. Okay. India and UAE, because of bilateral trade, we expect trade to be $100 billion this year. So one way, I believe, to avoid all these surprises is the bilateral trade agreement.
India provides a phenomenal example, a case that could be made to President Trump of why it would be very beneficial to the U.S. to lead the G20.
Dr. Jaishankar, breaking with tradition, maybe I can this time start with you. And, since last year, since one year ago when we met here, we have seen that the wars have continued unabated. We have seen climate shocks and natural disasters occur frequently. Great power rivalries with new dimensions exist. What have we learned in the last 1 year? What has India learned about both power and vulnerability? And how is it shaping Indian foreign policy today?
I think a year ago, certainly a few months ago, it was very clear that the world was moving towards much greater unpredictability, volatility, uncertainty. Use whichever word you prefer. And here's the problem. When you predict something like that, people say, okay, so you predict what that means. Now, by very definition of unpredictability, you don't know what you're heading towards. It's not an extrapolation of what has been there in the past. Clearly it's disruptive. But again, the human mind, like, for example, people felt in unpredictability that it'll be a variant, for example, of somebody's second, first term would be different, first term, and then what happens. But what we are seeing is terms are different, times are different, a few months make a difference, a few weeks make a difference, a few tweets make a difference. So actually, it's really quite a, I would say, an experience for the world to go through this level of policy changes, of practical impact of that. And also the fact that so much of it is done so publicly. That it's played out in the full glare of the spotlight. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, if you look, I'm talking, the last 3-4 years, we began out by worrying about our supply chains and our sources of production, and said, okay, when we said, let's de-risk the world, let us hedge against uncertainty. That meant having more production centers, having more supply chains, more resilient, more redundant supply chains. But now we also have to protect ourselves against the uncertainty of market access. So, you worry about over-dependence on markets, just as you worried on over-dependence on suppliers or over-dependence on connectivity. So you could say, in a sense, almost the entire economic chain has become far more riskier or far more difficult really to assume in many ways. So I would say today the central proposition probably in diplomacy, in international relations is how do you de-risk, how do you hedge, How do you become more resilient? How do you safeguard yourself against unforeseen contingencies, which again I emphasize by definition are unforeseen, and really build policy and build, in a sense, plans around that, and that's a very big challenge for the entire world.
And since, and I'm going to turn to the secretary from Mexico, but before, just as a lead-in question to the question to you, I saw on Twitter that you had met a group of Global South countries recently, yesterday in fact, and
today.
And you've been discussing, of course, the imperatives and collaborative methods on the days ahead. We talk about the South-South agenda, India, Mexico, Brazil, and other large economies in the Global South. They talk about working together, partnering together, finding solutions together. Can you scale up to substitute for the missing north in many of these projects?
I'm not sure, Samir, that I would accept that binary. By the way, among the people I met were all my European counterparts as well. So I think it's too simplistic to put North in a basket and South in a basket. And there are some countries which fit neither. So it's a much more complicated, much more nuanced world. I think many of the concerns, for example, which I articulated are also concerns which are shared in Europe. I certainly heard that from my European colleagues. So what is happening, that's why I would, in a way, say the model, we've had an accelerated move into a multipolar world. Okay? A multipolar world where actually the most important poles of the world are today driving multipolarity, not diluting it. So many of these concerns, the search for new partners, more partners, bigger partners, more business, more options, it's not something which is a global South concern alone or an Indian concern alone. I think different parts of the world share it. I certainly heard it in Europe. Their interest today in moving forward with India was very palpable, and by the way is very reciprocated by us. But it also applies, as you say, to the Global South. I think a large part of our discussions are that there are many things we can do between ourselves. Maybe we have not explored that as seriously and efficiently as we should. And we could be looking at it. In fact, this is exactly what the minister and I were discussing before this panel started, between India and Mexico. So I can imagine, look, globalization won't stop. Doing business with each other won't stop. It's just different lines of different intensity and different values will now get re-engineered because of these changes, and it's that re-engineering process that we are actually going to see over a period of time.